Well, and I also, based on the years that we're talking about, I mean, it's not without worth being mentioned that the landscape changed a lot in the last 20 years as far as like a creative goes. What may have seemed like a reasonable career path or path to take in 2005, whatever, is very different than what would be a reasonable career path now. Like things that would have been open to you are indelibly closed at this point for no other reason than just your your genitals and your skin color. We'll just say.
This is one of the funny things because no one told me this at the time. This, how do you, it's that old sort of cliche about boiling a frog slowly. I didn't really understand it at the time as it was happening. But yeah, I think that this really hateful and regressive and frankly evil ideology just started taking over. I think that this has been a problem for a long time.
Mind you, neither of us consider ourselves conservatives either. So it's the worst part about this.
No, I know exactly right. But I was guilty of demon. Yeah, I contributed to it too. I think I used to demonize conservatives. I'm not a conservative, but I don't demonize them anymore. I read a lot of conservative news outlets with along with a lot of liberal news outlets, not to.
Well, I certainly used to pick on them about their slippery slope fallacy all the time. That is proven truer and truer every day into my adulthood.
Right. No, it has a lot of this stuff has come to pass. I mean, it's ugly. So, at any rate, I finally got around to writing the novel, and through my comic book writing, I knew a literary agent, and she said, uh, "No, I won't publish it, but if you work with some editors and get it edited, I'll take another look at it." So, so this happened. I went to an editor. I met one amazing editor, um, Benet. It's funny. I haven't spoken to her in a long time. It was really. I learned so much about writing. I learned so much about myself from her. She is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life.
Now, so that's interesting because you're saying like you at this point you've had success to whatever degree you want to define that. You've had success in writing comics, and you're now trying to get into writing novels. And there's that much of a jump in like the writing from comics to novels that like you're basically told, well, I can't even look at that. You're gonna go find an actual editor for this. Like, it's just that much of a different animal.
Yeah, it's funny, and exactly as to what you were saying was true. I didn't realize that this at the time, but if you want to be, you have to pay for and find and seek out an editor yourself now, basically, before you go to a literary agent or to a publisher. That is something that the writer has to take upon themselves. They want a fully edited novel that's basically turnkey ready. Because even back then in the day, just the money was just drying up in publishing. Yeah.
And so then when you know that you're going into this, then the question I always ask is, look, if the thing has to be completely ready by the time I get to you, then what in the hell is the point?
No, exactly right. Exactly right. As I kept doing more stuff, it's just like I'm kind of doing everything on my own here and paying for everything on my own, guys.
When do you start doing stuff? Like, what is the point in that?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, no. So you're kind of following this trajectory where, and by the way, I do know people who are on professional, are published, traditionally, and they still all tell me the same thing. Yeah, I mean, I do everything. Occasionally, like they might make it easier to get certain things done, but I'm still responsible for all of my own marketing. I'm still responsible for making this thing happen for me. So even the guys I know who do trad pub, they're still like it's a mixed bag of whether or not they at any point are going to go back to just publishing themselves. Because once they've kind of got their own name recognition out there, it's really there's not much point for it at that point.
Exactly. Now I know a bunch of great editors now with Benet and some other editors. I mean, I worked really, really hard on it, and it was, it's sad because I was done with it. Benet was an intense process, but after like a year of working out there, she was like, "Ovid, I think this novel's fabulous. I'm so impressed with what you've done. I think, and she was not our name dropper. I think she worked with some like pretty famous authors. I never asked because it was just like, it was just a little, she was great. I mean, I think she had an intense client list. In fact, when I approached her, she was just like, "Oh, but I'd love to work with you, but I'm not available for the next 18 months. I'm sorry." I was just like, "Well, screw you then."
Well, if you know anything about like in the book world, that is just like if I'm dedicating my time to making a book happen, like you just don't have the bandwidth for other stuff. Which I'm assuming the longer you spend working on this stuff for yourself and having to deal with the marketing side of things, you realize just how much work goes into like that part of the animal. And I'm constantly coming up with people, you know, they're like, well, like I'll have to quit writing for 6 months just so I can do the marketing stuff for the book. And I don't want to, so I never do. And then, well, if you never do that, then you never achieve what you want to achieve. You're always just kind of writing for what audience, you know, that kind of thing.
Exactly. This week, like, we're doing this crowdfunding comic book campaign. I spent all this week getting the die ready for the mailing package, the packaging mailer, and the Pantone swatches, and the services agreement for this animated trailer that we're it's just like, yeah, right, yeah. Right. The amount of time I spend writing is just like, yeah.
The smallest part of what you actually end up having to do for it.
Right. And then, of course, when you sit down and write, you're kind of like, and I don't know what to write. What do I do?
So, when you think marketing or like having gone through the process that you have, what does marketing mean to you? What does that even exist like?
Yeah, I am so glad that you reached out to me for this because it really forced me to think hard about that question. What I have discovered two things. There are two kinds of marketing strategies: ones that work and ones that don't. Um,
Generally,
Generally speaking. And I think a lot of the advice that you get, like, what is marketing? I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But basically, it means standing out from everybody else. Everyone's fighting for attention. How do you get attention from people? How do you get people, like the opening of The Big Lebowski is one of my favorite film openings of all time. It opens with the thugs dunking Jeff Bridges' head into a toilet. And it's such a great opening because it's just like, whoa.
those damn nihilists.
Right, those damn nihilists. It really gets your attention. How do you take people's heads and dunk their heads into toilets? That's what marketing is about for me, basically. How do you get people to pay attention to you? How do you get them to stand out from the pack?
Even the pack is an interesting word because it's like you're not just competing against other creators in like your own space. Even it's like you've got to stand out against the feed of constant. I mean, well, just constant politics and socialization that's just constantly pinging them in their brain at all times. That's why, like modern marketing, it's interruption marketing is what it's called. You have to interrupt the crap that they're already doing and thinking. That's why one of the big phrases we use is the only real way in is to enter the conversation they're already having.
Right. Wow. I'd never heard that. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Right. I mean, oh my God, the amount of competition out there. Like you said, right, it's not about, I do firmly believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that if one comic succeeds, other comics can succeed.
But you're competing against Trump getting shot at.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
And how do you pierce that veil?
Right. No, exactly. So, okay. So here's an example. I've seen people doing this in the independent comics realm. This is a very sad story, but this is just a kind of a pitfall you can have. I was talking to an artist. He developed an Instagram following of like 100,000 followers. Amazing. But this is in the didn't work column, unfortunately. And he wrote a very honest Twitter post about this. I really appreciated it. It was honest and it was really refreshing. He had 100,000 Twitter followers, but he gained it by doing drawing. He's a brilliant artist doing drawings of like Batman, Spider-Man, and Thundercats, and He-Man, whatever it might be. So he said that this is what he found it happening. Anytime he did a drawing of one of his original characters, he would lose 100 followers. And anytime he had like a call to action, hey, check out my store, check out my website, buy my t-shirts or whatever, he would lose 100 followers every single time, and he would get no sales. So in other words, I think the problem he had is that he developed a huge Instagram following, but it wasn't really the following that he needed or wanted to sustain him in making comic books.
His lead magnet wasn't, setting the funnel up for what it needed to be set up for. He's not drawing the right clients. He's drawing people that are interested in something that he's not ultimately trying to sell.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, exactly. It's hard. It sucks. It's heartbreaking, but that just wasn't why they were there. And I think that's another thing that I remember all the time. I'd love to know what your thoughts on this, but I think there's this saying, you have no friends on Wall Street. And I think that they say that's one of the first things that they teach you if you like, one of the first things that they say when you get in the door in like Morgan Stanley or UBS or Goldman Sachs or whatever, they say, look, you have no friends. You have no friends. And just remember that.
I think, and that's why if you look at my Twitter, I label myself a post-corporate marketer. And I think that mentality is something that's been shared by a lot of people for a long time. It's also why no one trusts companies and corporations anymore, because they have lived too long where like it's dog eat dog. We're all trying to screw each other over. And it's just not a sustainable mentality long term. The idea, like, I mean, I'm a capitalist in the sense that like the whole point in capitalism is to offer people value and give them what they want in exchange for value, and develop relationships that ultimately are going to help you do that better over time. And if you're constantly screwing each other over, then no one's really getting the value they want, because if I can't expect to work with you in 10 years, well, then, I have to make more decisions down the road for other products because this product's not working out for me. It's just not sustainable. So I see why people say that. And maybe I'd say like no one cares about you like you do. But look, if we have to go out in the world and we're all constantly fighting at each other's throats, then what kind of world and purpose is any of this anyways,
100%. And yeah, let me just qualify what I was saying. I don't mean with regards to like interpersonal relationships. I mean more like, just like you have no friends on Wall Street. It's more like the analogy I'm trying to make is you have no friends in Silicon Valley either. Google is not your friend. Mark Zuckerberg is not your friend. All of these social media companies, you know what I mean? Instagram wants to make people hooked on Instagram. They don't want to help you sell your comic necessarily. I mean, you just need to make sure that those two things are in alignment.
Well, more importantly, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to do what maximizes profit, no matter what that is. Like, that is how our legal structure in America is set up.
And it should be. It should be. That's fine. But yet I think you just have to keep that in mind all times. And to me, that story about that creator with the Twitter, Instagram following that didn't translate into sales, that's a perfect example of that, in my opinion.
Well, to me, it's when I think of marketing like guitar cables and guitar effects pedals. It's how I always think about it. But it's because I come from the world of music. For me, it's all about, my goal is I want to put people in here and have customers out here. And if I'm not getting customers out here, at some point in this signal path or in this chain of events, something is not doing what it's supposed to be. Something is causing these people to go somewhere else or do something else. It's not connecting. And so the goal is always just to find where the lack of connection is in your system.